Hey grinders, this is Gabby. I'm glad that you're working this area of the haunted house. I'm just going to quickly tell you about a couple safety things that you might need to know if you're working here in the grinder hallway. The first thing is right at the beginning part of the attraction are the water fountains. Students may still use them, but if you are working on the side of the grinder, you might want to be careful how you step back. What you'll see is there's this little area here, and they will be directly behind you, which means you want to sort of just be aware how close you are to them. It's the same thing on the other side here with the glass. If you're working the grinder mechanism, notice that there's a ledge right here at the bottom. When you step back from the plastic, there is the risk of you stepping on it, and number one, you might break the glass, but number two, you might also sprain an ankle. You want to make sure you sort of know exactly what's behind you. So if I show you this here, what you'll notice is you'll sort of be standing in about a 1 to 2 foot area here. Another thing to be aware of is there's going to be stuff on the ceiling, of course, and you're going to want to sort of look up and check the ceiling tiles. Obviously the lights will be out, but the grinder attraction does hang from the ceiling, and it's again plastic bags, so you want to be aware sort of the ceiling along with you holding the bags. Right here, the other thing you want to notice in the hallway, this is your closest fire extinguisher. Believe it or not, even with things like battery-powered lights, there is a small risk of a fire. We don't expect you to put the fire out, but you should know exactly where the fire hydrant is. And everybody in the hallway, they don't need to necessarily know how to work the fire extinguisher, but you do want to know where it's at so that you can go ahead and look for it. When you find something, any sort of emergency in this area, the other thing that you're going to want to do is notify somebody immediately, and be aware also of what's in front of you. As you walk toward the last part of this attraction, one of the other areas that you're going to want to watch is right here. This is where students are going to be running from the end of the grinder through this hallway. And one of the things that you'll notice, the language lab door is going to be closed, and students will be, hopefully, if we scare them enough, running. And they'll be running this way. This is a very narrow hallway. And so one of the things you'll want to sort of be aware of is that none of these doors will be open. They will all be locked. These are faculty offices. And as you can see, it's not a very wide hallway, which means if you're working the end part of the grinder attraction, you're going to want to follow them a little bit. Number one, to scare them, but number two, to make sure that everybody is safe. This hallway will be slightly dark, and there will be probably a strobe light at the very end, which is the only thing that the visitors are going to run towards in order to successfully escape the haunted house. As you get towards the end here, this is the last part of the grinder attraction and something that you might want to be aware of. Right here, just like always, is the clock. And remember that this scrolls with a safety message if anything happens in the building or even on campus. They'll be operating just like normal. The clocks will be open, and so if you're in this area or there is some sort of emergency, you should do what you always do as a student. Tell the visitors as well they can look up at the clock because those emergency instructions will scroll. If you notice something odd on the clock, like it says an emergency and no one else has noticed, you can stop and help everybody out. Go find somebody from the scream team, and they should be able to help you. And the last thing is, this is the exit. This is the exit where everyone from the haunted house will exit. But it's also important to note that this is the exit that you use if there happens to be a fire in the building or an evacuation. Again, fire drills, evacuations all come from the same emergency warning. If there is something like a fire, what we will do is exit out of the back of the writing center or around and then up the stairs. Remember that just like any other emergency, the elevators will not be working if there's a fire or an evacuation. The other thing, just a practical thing, is you want to make sure that people who are running, the visitors, that they don't go into this hallway. Obviously, they can't go anywhere. Okay? So you want to make sure that they're getting successfully to the door. When they get through the door, they're essentially in the hands of the person who's working the scream team right here, which means once they get out the door and you make contact with the scream team person, they are officially out of your hands and you have gotten them safely out of the haunted house. Thanks, guys.